Welcome to Windsor Chronicles, the podcast where we go beyond royal headlines to uncover the history, humanity, and hidden meanings behind every royal moment. I'm your host, and today's episode dives into one of the most symbolically powerful encounters of King Charles III's reign, his long-awaited meeting and shared prayer with Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican. It's a story layered with history, faith, irony, and perhaps even redemption. Because when the head of the Church of England, a divorced, remarried monarch, kneels to pray beside the head of the Roman Catholic Church, it isn't just a photo opportunity. It's a moment 5 centuries in the making. Let's unpack how this happened, why it matters, and what it reveals about the man behind the crown, King Charles III. It began early Thursday morning in Rome, the Vatican City aglow under a pale October sun. King Charles III and Queen Camilla arrived at the Apostolic Palace, greeted by Vatican officials. And there it was, the image Charles had long sought, the head of the Church of England, hand in hand with the Pope. A symbol of unity, reconciliation, and perhaps a personal victory. After all, few moments carry more weight than an English king, descendant of Henry VIII, standing before the very institution his ancestor defied. Observers said Charles looked contemplative, almost emotional. He knew the cameras were rolling, but there was something deeper at play, an attempt to close a centuries-old wound. For the Pope, it was formal, cautious, yet welcoming. For Charles, it was history rewritten. To truly understand this meeting, we must rewind the clock nearly 500 years to the reign of King Henry VIII. It was Henry's defiance of Rome, his break from the Catholic Church to secure a divorce, that gave birth to the Church of England, a separation rooted in both politics and passion, forever altering the landscape of faith and monarchy. Fast forward to 2025. Another English king, divorced and remarried, now steps back toward the Vatican, not to seek permission, but to seek understanding. The irony is striking. What began as a schism of pride has now evolved into a gesture of humility. Segment 3. A prayer in the Sistine Chapel. The prayer itself took place inside the Sistine Chapel, beneath the breathtaking ceiling painted by Michelangelo. There, surrounded by centuries of sacred art and history, King Charles and Pope Leo XIV knelt together. 2 leaders, 2 faiths, 1 moment. It wasn't a grand ceremony filled with trumpets and processions. No pomp, no theatrical lighting, just quiet reverence. And maybe that's what made it so powerful. For all of Charles's known love for pageantry, this was understated, almost intimate. This was the first time in modern history that a British monarch, the head of the Anglican Church, publicly prayed with a pope. A shared prayer in the very heart of Catholicism, in the same chamber where Pope Leo had been chosen to lead the global church just months earlier. This meeting wasn't merely about faith, it was about legacy. King Charles has long envisioned himself as more than a monarch. He sees himself as a spiritual bridge, a man who believes in the shared essence of all religions. For decades, he has spoken of being a defender of faith rather than defender of the faith. And here in Rome, that vision came alive. He and Queen Camilla joined the Pope in an ecumenical service marking the Jubilee, a year of penance and forgiveness that happens once every 25 years. The irony was rich, a divorced and remarried monarch, seeking unity in faith, standing in the very place where his ancestors' defiance began. Some critics, of course, couldn't help but notice that shadow. The British tabloids cheekily noted, "From Henry's divorce to Charles's prayer, full circle at last." But for Charles, this wasn't about image, or perhaps not only image. It was about healing history. Queen Elizabeth II, Charles's late mother, met several popes, John XXIII, Paul VI, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Francis. Yet, she never prayed publicly with any of them. Her reign was one of quiet diplomacy and cautious separation between the churches. Charles, however, steps differently. Not in defiance, but in engagement. He has always been drawn to the mysticism of faith, whether in Christian liturgy, Islamic philosophy, or Eastern meditation. To him, unity of spirit transcends doctrine. And so his prayer with the Pope wasn't merely royal symbolism, it was personal philosophy made manifest. Later that day, King Charles attended another service at the Basilica of St. Paul's outside the walls, one of the 4 major basilicas in Rome. There he was granted the title of Royal Confrater, an honorary position recognizing the centuries-old relationship between the British monarchy and the Vatican. The Vatican even presented the king with a specially designed chair adorned with the royal coat of arms and the inscription Ut unum sint, Latin for that they may be one. Those 4 words capture the essence of Charles's mission: unity, not uniformity. The chair, reserved for him and his descendants, will forever stand as a symbol of this reconciliation between faiths. But as this historic meeting unfolded, back home in Britain, the royal narrative was far less peaceful. Growing calls for renewed investigations into Prince Andrew's dealings and questions surrounding the Crown estates continued to haunt the monarchy. Critics accused the king of using his Vatican trip as a moral distraction from domestic unrest. Yet even amid controversy, the timing of this moment could not have been more powerful, because when a monarch kneels before the Pope, even symbolically, it sends a message that humility is not weakness, it's leadership. Meanwhile, the Church of England faces its own transformation. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, resigned last year amid scandal over alleged mishandling of clerical abuse cases. Now, history is being made again. The Right Reverend Sarah Mullaly has been named the first woman ever to hold the role. For the first time in history, both the Vatican and the Anglican Church have found themselves under new leadership. Pope Leo XIII in Rome, and soon Archbishop Mullaly in London. And in the midst of it all, King Charles, trying to unify, modernize, and reframe faith itself. For Charles, this meeting was more than diplomacy, it was redemption. A divorced and remarried man, often criticized for his past, now standing before the world as a symbol of forgiveness, dialogue, and renewal. Even Pope Leo's tone during their meeting seemed to reflect that, measured, polite, yet undeniably warm. Observers noticed that while Charles sought reconciliation between 2 faiths, he also seemed to seek reconciliation within himself. It was, in many ways, a confession without words. The world may remember this moment as a royal milestone, the day an English king prayed with a pope. But history will likely see it as something even deeper, a symbolic act of courage and conscience. When Charles and Pope Leo bowed their heads beneath Michelangelo's painted skies, it wasn't just a gesture for the cameras, it was a reminder that time, humility, and faith can heal even the deepest divides. And perhaps, just perhaps, King Charles III has begun writing his own kind of spiritual legacy, not one defined by scandal or headlines, but by reconciliation. Thank you for joining me on Windsor Chronicles. If today's episode moved you, inspired you, or made you see the Crown in a new light, be sure to subscribe and share. Next week, we'll explore another fascinating chapter. The Queen's quiet power, Elizabeth II's influence beyond the throne. Until then, I'm your host, reminding you that history is not just what happened, it's what we choose to understand from it. And today, we witnessed a royal prayer echoing through 500 years.